Okay, welcome everyone. I'm Linda Jonson, and I'd like to thank you for being here today. I'd like to introduce my co-hosts, evolutionary astrologers Tashi Powers and Wendy Groomes, and pay tribute to their successes. Be sure to check out Tashi's book, Mysteries of the Venus Pentagram, available on Amazon, and Wendy's Virgo book, coming out soon. The purpose of this meeting is to learn more about the Venus Pentagram. All three of us have been eagerly researching and teaching it. Today we'll be presenting a comprehensive introduction and overview, followed by an examination of 8 volunteer charts.
Welcome everyone. This is Wendy Groomes, and to start everything off, we would like to thank Jeffrey Wolf Green, the founder of Evolutionary Astrology and our teacher for this incredible paradigm. And although the Venus star is not necessarily evolutionary astrology, we have incorporated the EA paradigm into our interpretations. And we are immensely grateful for the intrinsic mindfulness of the EA community, especially in supporting each other in all of our unique gifts and encouragement to write, create, and to follow our soul purpose.
I'd also like to thank our very loyal and super efficient admins of EA Zoom meetings. And we couldn't do this without them, so thank you very much, Robin, Olive, Wei, Wendy, Wanda, and our 8 volunteers today who will be providing their feedback.
And hello everyone, this is Tashi, and I was given the gift of pulling a card today. So I pulled the card, the Star, which is the 17th Major Arcana tarot card, and it is about Aquarius. It's about pulling the energy from the cosmos or the multiverse or the universe down into yourself and pouring that water, the waters of co-creation with reality, into your life. So I thought that was a really beautiful card, and it is certainly probably one of my very favorite cards in the tarot. So that's our card for today, Aquarius, which Jeffrey used the words sharing, caring, and inclusion. So we're going to share, care, and include our understanding of Venus today.
Tashi, could you please...
Oh yeah, this is Rebecca Joy.
Yeah.
A dear friend of mine who I didn't know for very long. She had died and gone to the other side, and then she came back, and when she was back, she painted all these beautiful angels that gave her a little bit more time on earth to be with her grandchildren. And this is Rebecca Joy's beautiful painting of the Venus love archetype, the love angel. And she didn't paint faces on them, and I asked her why, and she said because they're all us. We are all these angels. So we're going to be graced by her beautiful art today. And then, of course, Venus has inspired some of the most beautiful art ever painted. And here are 2 very beautiful examples of Venus being birthed out of the shell. She apparently came out of the sea, or she came out of the head of Uranus, but she is just this most incredibly inspired archetype, Venus. And we know so much more about how magical Venus is. And this, of course, art depicts the pleasure aspect of Venus, the beautiful Venus Taurus aspect of Venus.
Okay, so moving on now to the Venus archetype. These are just some of the main Venus correlations. The inner relationship with self, external relationships we form with others, external relationships reflecting our inner relationship to self, our values and essential needs, Taurus, determine whom we form relationships with, Libra. Extremities, how we balance discordant aspects of ourselves, domination, submission dynamics, comparing and contrasting our values and beliefs with others, understanding that all are equal and each person's views are valid, The lesson is to learn balance and equality.
So when the inner side of Venus is the Taurus house, the second house, and the planet Venus in the sign of Taurus, we are dealing with how we relate to ourselves. What are our inner resources, our inner capacities, our talents? How can we learn to be self-reliant and self-sufficient? And we must learn to do that in Venus Taurus. Otherwise, we tend to be what Jeffrey called the frog in the well, which we'll talk about later. And discovering our values, we discover our essential needs, and we practice the psychology of listening to ourselves. We deal with survival issues in our childhood usually, and if we really figure out what holds value and meaning for us, and we have an inner dialogue with ourselves that we don't project onto others, then we can deal with the frog in the well scenario that Jeffrey talks about in his first book on Pluto. He talks about it in Pluto in the second house, but the frog in the well is very much about Taurus, where the little frog, this was Jeffrey's analogy, lives way down this rabbit hole down in the bottom of a well. And he thinks he has it made. He's got lily pads and there's enough dead flies to eat, and his kids all have lily pads, and the sun goes by every day and there's these gorgeous stars at night. But one day, what would happen if the frog accidentally jumped into the bucket and found himself at the top of the well for a week? And he saw the vastness of everything around him. So this is the inner side of Venus, realizing that our comfort isn't necessarily good for our perspective, all right? It makes an adjustment to Sagittarius, and we have to learn to not be too complacent with our comfort on the inner side of Venus, Venus Taurus.
And the outer side of Venus is reflected in the archetype of Libra, and the projected or external, it's the projected or external nature of Venus. And to see our relationships as a reflection of our inner relationships. So Venus, Libra tends to project outward onto other people. And it tends to operate that way unless we're very self-reflective and highly aware. The impulse is to initiate relationships with all types of people, and also how to be in relationship on an equal basis. Learning that conditional love comes from projecting expectations onto others. And also how to listen to others from their reality, not our own, in order to truly understand what they are communicating and needing. Libra is not inherently balanced. It is learning balance. An example of Venus and Scorpio will naturally be listening to others from a bottom line psychological standpoint. They may come into relationships with unconscious fears of abandonment, betrayal, and loss, and unconsciously project these fears onto others by listening to their partner in a defensive manner, and also project that the other person has ulterior motives or agendas, which the other, in fact, does not have.
Okay, so it's really important to grasp all the facets of Venus, of the Venus archetype in the natal chart before even looking at the Venus pentagram. So we really need to begin with the Pluto paradigm, which is made up of Pluto, the nodes, their rulers and aspects, the Venus house, sign and aspects, the ruler of Venus, the aspect between Venus and Pluto. Is Venus on an angle or in a prominent position? The sign on the second house cusp, the sign on the seventh house cusp, the south and north nodes of Venus, and any major transits to Venus. So the nodes of Venus today, the south node of Venus is at 3 Scorpio 12, and the north node of Venus is at 22 Leo 22. And Tashi will explain a little bit more about this later on.
The Venus
so now we come to the Venus pentagram section.
So in my book, I talk about this Venus pentagram that the ancients 10,000 years ago called a Venus-Sun conjunction, which we are now calling a pointed star or pentagram, because we can see it using technological computer insights that Venus actually orbits into a 5-pointed star or pentagram, forming 2 of them in 8 years. So every 9 months, one of these points form, and the Venus pentagram begins with an inferior conjunction of that's the conjunction of Sun and Venus while Venus is retrograde, and then the evening star has one of these points while the Sun and Venus are conjunct when Venus is direct. So these 2 cycles begin that way. And also in between it, we have a period of the Sun and Venus being in what is called cazimi. Cazimi means that they're so close that the sun sheds light and burns away the obsolete in an alchemical process or rebirth. And in ancient times, the patriarchy, Jeffrey was teaching this in the 90s, that the patriarchy usurped all the feminine wisdom and didn't want anyone to believe women had all this wisdom. And so they said we were in the underworld and we were hysterical. But really, we were in sunlight. Venus is invisible in many parts of the earth, not all of the earth. So she's not in an underworld because she's visible in Helsinki and northern latitudes. She's just invisible in the central latitudes, but she's in sunlight. That's why we can't see her. So I think it's very, very urgent that women take away this whole notion of you're hysterical and you're in the underworld, and understand that you're in bright sunlight and you're trying to be victorious as a female.
What is the Venus pentagram? Venus is endlessly creating 5-pointed stars that are all connected. The prenatal Venus pentagram embedded in us prior to our birth shows our innate natural talents and gifts. We share similar stars with others close to our age, the houses making the interpretation specific. So wherever your Venus pentagram point is in your chart will be different than someone the exact same age as you, born in May and someone else born in October of the same year. Venus is the principle of love, harmony, beauty, connection, and relationship. The current cycle in Leo, which just began this August, brings opportunities for creative self-actualization, recognition, purpose, and will set the tone for the next 18 months.
And I think Linda found us this gorgeous diagram when she began these EA talks on this Venus pentagram so many years ago now. But look at this. This is actually the conjunctions of Earth, Venus, and as they orbit around the sun, as Earth and Venus orbit around the sun. And so that's what's forming. And it's just mind-blowingly beautiful that this is what our universe looks like. And actually all of the planets do this. So here it is. These are made every 8 years and every 13 orbits of Venus. And you can find that online, set it as a screensaver. It's just so pretty.
Venus, though, is the only one that makes that beautiful rose, right?
This one, yeah. They make, I think the other ones make octograms and different things. This is the
yeah.
Yeah. Future talks.
Okay, so the Venus synodic cycle. So I put this diagram together. And so over here we have the Sun-Venus retrograde interior conjunction. That's where we begin. And it begins as a morning star. Now, I did have some notes on this, but I've lost them. But anyway, not to worry. So the whole cycle is 584 days, 1.6 years. Half the cycle, when we go from morning star to evening star, is 288 days, or 9.5 months. Each phase is 73 days, or 2.5 months, which I find interesting. So any comments from you, Tashi or Wendy, on this diagram?
This is a great grid for everybody to study. It's very, very hard to know all of this. This is deep and meaningful. So you should definitely take a picture of this if you're not going to watch this video again.
We could say that for right now, we are at full phase, beginning the full phase, correct?
Yes, we have just begun the Sun-Venus exterior conjunction, which was August 14th, and it was a new pentagram point. And so yes, we are in the full phase.
So everything that, oh, sorry, Linda. Everything that we gleaned from the morning star phase, from new phase crescent, first quarter gibbous, we're taking all of that and we're bringing it now into the full phase. We're on the top of the wheel, and we're bringing all of that out into the world, into society.
Yeah, and I think that, for me, it's also connecting with the social phase is always, we've lost the subjective, and now we have to go figure out how do we function socially. And considering we now have this internet and so many more ways to be socially functioning, I think this full phase as an evening star has gotten even more meaningful for all of us, because we can earn money now with Venus social in this phase.
The other thing that's really, sorry, Linda.
No, you go ahead. It's okay.
Well, the other thing that's really beautiful about this is the overtone of Libra through this whole cycle of Venus, and here we are in the 7th house. The full.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's all lined up right now. Sorry,
Which is the house of Libra, if that doesn't make any sense to whoever's listening.
So yes, so Venus is now ready. So, we really are all ready to enter the social sphere, cooperate with others, share, compare, listen. And if we don't do this and we want to, oops, 1 second. Okay. We will then retreat back to a narcissistic orientation. So we don't want to do that. We want to go forward with the evening star and get out there in the social sphere. So the quintile family, this is what the Venus star is made out of. And so the quintile represents the 5th harmonic. It is also said to be one-pointed and intensely driven in a specialized field of activity. Esoterically, the quintile links the soul with the will of the cosmos. Quintiles tend not to fulfill their universal potential until we have struggled to become more self-aware. It is generally associated with Uranus in its expression of freedom, variety, and experimentation. The quintiles indicate creative genius, insight, and mental artistry. Occultly, they are linked with the mind and alchemy. So now let's look at the quintiles in more detail. The crescent quintile at 72 degrees is 1 point away. It is creative transformation, yin, internalization, a struggle to believe in and establish the new. Just 1 moment. A unique new style or way of creative actualization has emerged to retreat within one's creativity and fully flow with its inspiration, a source of great enthusiasm about life, feeling good about things because it is utterly new, like an adventure unfolding every minute. Then we go to the gibbous biquintile at 144 degrees, which is 2 points away, internalization of individuality. Analysis must take place as to how to link the unique creativity to the needs of others, necessary groundwork, grooming, and service to the needs of others in preparation for the social sphere. And everyone could please mute themselves. And if the co-host could keep an eye on the muting for me. Thank you. Then the full phase biquintile is 216 degrees. It's 3 points away. The externalization of individuality. Here we are contrasting capacities against those of others. This aspect tells me who I am, that my special capacity is contrasted with another's capacity. Thus, the uniqueness of my social function becomes very clear. And lastly, the last quarter quintile at 288 degrees, it's 4 points away. This is a very creative aspect, the spirit of uniqueness, invention, and innovation. Now we'll just take a minute for our audience to read through these keywords while the co-hosts have a little break.
Okay, so now we'll look at the morning star and the evening star. So the morning star is formed when Venus is seen rising ahead of the sun. And we can see here in this little chart, see this is Venus here, and here's the sun. Venus is moving towards the sun, and this indicates a morning star. Venus is always, the sun is ahead of Venus. That's always a morning star. The qualities are yang, it's an Aries quality. Venus is rising ahead of the sun. This energy is spontaneous, eager, impulsive, emotional nature. Not necessarily unrestrained. There is a new quality of will and purpose. So it's like we could think of Wonder Woman, right? That the energy that we saw in the movie Wonder Woman that just came out a couple years ago. It's an intuitive energy, fire sign, fire energy is very intuitive. Strong focus on self-development. Keywords for the morning star are fresh, spontaneous, open, resilient, courageous, instinctive, and passionate. And then we have the evening star. And here on the chart, you can see here's the sun, and here's Venus ahead of the sun. So when Venus is ahead of the sun, we are in the evening star phase. And the evening star qualities is yin. It's a yin energy, which is feminine. It's a Libran quality, which allows us to look at all sides of an issue or a person. There's a deliberate, goal-oriented, controlled emotional makeup within the person or the quality of the time. It's an introverted based on psychological crises, which is, it's willing to look inside and see itself, to look out into others for relationship reflection. It's highly values spirituality, spiritual life. Wise woman, more focused on relationships than material world. So we could think of Wonder Woman, and you could think of like an old crone, or, you know, living in the woods in her cabin, right? I mean, it's kind of like there's an evening star energy, and then there's the warrior energy of the morning star. The evening star individual tends to put needs and desires of others first. Keywords are intense emotions, private, internal, refined, social, deliberate, and mature. And I will say that, you know, someone might be an evening star and have a lot of the other qualities of an extroverted yang. So everything is based on the interpretation of the entire chart. It's not just one thing that we're going to look at. It has to do with placement and, like what Linda said earlier, all the aspects to Venus and the star point.
Okay, now we come to a very interesting section called the Venus-Pluto sync, synchronicity. The Venus pentagram moves in a retrograde motion. Every 240 years, Venus pentagram points, occurring in pairs of 8 years apart, visit all 12 signs of the zodiac. This period of time is closely synchronistic with Pluto's 248-year orbit around the Sun. What does this mean? It's interesting to consider that the first ever seen close-up image of Pluto revealed the shape of a heart on its surface. From this combination, we can extrapolate that the Venus-Pluto sync can generate critical or cataclysmic events for evolutionary reasons. As an example, the recent evening star on January 9, 2018 at 19 degrees Capricorn, as well as the morning star on October 26, 2018, 3 degrees Scorpio retrograde, were greatly accentuated by transiting Pluto in Capricorn, as well as the underlying Pluto return cycle, emphasizing, excuse me, critical or cataclysmic events around abandonment, betrayal, death, or loss. This also highlights the root chakra, ruled by Pluto, Saturn, and Uranus, and the evolutionary intention in this time frame is to let down our Saturnian resistance in all of our karmic relationships. If we do not change, then Pluto forces us to change. 2018 and 2019 are very intense. Do you agree?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So now, here we have an example of two charts with 243 years apart between them. The 1761 Venus pentagram point at 15 degrees Gemini retrograde has similar placements 243 years later in June 2004. Note that Pluto is in Sagittarius in both charts, opposite the Venus pentagram point. And another example, the 1776 Venus pentagram point at 22 Leo direct, with similar placements 240 years later in August 2019. Note that Pluto is in Capricorn in both charts, conjunct the South Node. And we went back even further and we looked ahead, we went back and forward. So here we've drawn up three charts to demonstrate the Venus-Pluto sync, all around the same date, 243 years apart, all with the Venus-Sun conjunction separated by 2 degrees, all retrograde. Pluto is in Taurus in all three charts. In the 1631 chart, Venus almost forms a full phase inconjunct with Pluto. In the 1874 chart, Venus forms a full phase inconjunct with Pluto within orb, and in the last chart for 2117, Venus forms an exact full phase inconjunct with Pluto. Well, it's hard to know what this is going to mean, but it can tell us about relationships in general for these particular morning stars. Purification and cleansing are needed. There is work to be done and improvements to be made. That is to do with the inconjunct, especially in the natural world, and that has to do with Sagittarius. So let's quickly examine Venus in each chart. Firstly, the ruler of the three Plutos is Venus. In the first chart, Venus forms trines with Mars, Jupiter, and Chiron. In the second chart, there is a grand trine with Venus, Uranus, and Chiron North Node. And in the third chart, Venus squares Chiron and Ceres. And there's a helpful quintile with the South Node, which draws from gifts from the past. Now onto the Venus transit, and Wendy will be looking at this.
Okay, that Venus transit in Gemini that occurred in our lifetimes from 2004 to 2012 is the only one that anyone on the planet has been alive for. They happen, well, I'll read what it says. The Venus transit is an astronomical event where the planet Venus passes between the Earth and the Sun, a sort of eclipse. Venus transits last for 6 to 7 hours and come in pairs separated by exactly 8 Earth years minus 2 days. As far as human measures go, such pairs of transits occur only rarely. The only one in our lifetimes began June 14th, 2004 in Gemini and ended June 6th, 2012. Both were considered new Venuses. So you can think of the graph that we looked at earlier of the Venus and the Earth making that rose of Venus. So when she's just beginning, she's like a bud, like a tight rosebud. And when she's in full phase, she's in a full blossom. During that transit, 2004 to 2012, my experience and many, many, many others that are linked into the Magdalene energy, Magdalene light, which is the modern Isis. She's the modern Isis poured onto the planet. She is the harbinger of the Aquarian age. During the Gemini-Venus transit, Uranus was in Pisces, squaring Pluto and Sag, opposing Venus and the Sun. And the Aquarian age is ruled by Uranus. And these are from Tashi's book. The internet, from 2012 to 2004 to 2012, what came forward in the collective was the internet. And I put internet. Also, it's the inner net of your intuition and refining the multidimensional consciousness, so that we're all communicating in a whole nother way now. The cycle before that was from 1880 to 1888, and what came forward in the collective was the telephone and the postal service. In 1760 to 1768 was the Industrial Revolution, and the cycle before that, 1630 to 1638, was the English Renaissance.
And so here is, from my book, The Mysteries of the Venus Pentagram, the Venus transit cycles that we put in a graph so that you could see these 243-year overlaps, and then the 8-year transits of Venus that happen in between, and there's 117 years, and it's something that you just have to study if you're interested in the technical. But that we've just come through the 2004 to 2012 one, the 8-year transit of Venus, where the Sun and Venus, you can see Venus moving along the Sun as a dot. And it'll happen again in 2117 through 2125. So not in most of our lifetimes. But these are the Kumari kisses. These are the gifts. And so the next huge gift, like a technological type of gift that moves humanity forward, is 2117. However, we have, until then, this 243-year cycle that this one is within, that was from 1874 to 2117, to continue to unfold these gifts that we've been receiving from maybe aliens, maybe our multidimensional higher selves. We don't really know yet where these are coming from, but they're indicated by the Sun-Venus conjunctions.
Okay, well, we can have a look at the charts now. And so anyone like to share what they see in these charts?
The only thing I would want to point out to everybody is that these Sun-Venus conjunctions in Gemini and these transits are because there are some nodes of Venus at 17 Gemini. So you'll often see this 15, 16, 17 Gemini highlighted where the Sun and Venus have the transit.
Okay, now we come to the current Venus pentagram in Leo, and another beautiful painting by Rebecca Joy.
Oh no, that's actually not. This is an old thing. Sorry, Linda. I sent this to you and I didn't say this. This is, somebody just turned this beautiful, very old painting, I think from the Renaissance, and they turned it inside out. So this is those people looking into space from Earth. And somebody has just on the internet made it look fabulous. So on the 23rd of 1987 of August, Leo became the sign of a new pentagram point, all right? So Virgo ended, and those of you born before 1987, before August 23rd have a Venus pentagram star. But those of you born after August 23rd, 1987 have a Leo pentagram star. And
they have
when
a Virgo.
Ended.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so now we have Leo. And if you know young people born in 87 and 88, they have this powerful Leo charismatic energy. I have the privilege of being able to read charts of some of these people. So this one began as an evening star, all right? And we've just had a Leo pentagram point form that is activated 1987. So those of you born in 87, 88, after this one, here you are, and we're now at 21 Leo on August 14th, 2019, minutes ago it feels like. And look at that beautiful image, Linda, that you've put in here of a girl holding a cat. And this is the tarot card. Well, the tarot card is of a woman, holding her strength. And so this is just the most beautiful image of nature, because we're all really connected to nature. And so in Leo, we are learning strength. So the pentagram star that we're experiencing now until next year is 9 months from August 14th is Leo. So it is really important that Jeffrey called it intentional narcissism. If you read the EA glossary that Linda so kindly put together for us of Jeffrey's work, Jeffrey Wolf Green's work on the School of Evolutionary Astrology, you'll learn that intentional narcissism gives you the strength to celebrate your talents and share those with humanity. And that as you get enough accolades for that, you eventually move on and you learn to be of service in Virgo. So this is the Sun-Venus conjunction that just happened at 21 Leo, and that's our current Venus pentagram point.
Now, I thought it would be good to go back into the past and have a look at the past Venus pentagram before we go to the present. So this one begins, let's have a look at the dates, in 2015 down here at Leo. And then we go around the wheel to 2016, 2017, etc. So any comments about this one?
I think people should just know that we're going from Leo, Gemini, Aries, Capricorn, and Scorpio. Those are our current pentagram points. But as we will say in a bit, the October 26, 2018, 3 Scorpio pentagram point is the last of Scorpio. Just like Virgo had ended, moving on to Libra. Leo. Scorpio is ending now. We won't have another Scorpio pentagram point. The next one will be in Libra. So we're in a transitional period. 87 was transitional, and 2019 and 18 will be considered transitional. So if you're feeling like you're living in changing times, this is one of the reasons.
And one thing we could say about that for people that are new to this whole dynamic of Venus is that these points impact the entire collective, right? Venus represents earth and feminine. Both sides of Venus are Libra is masculine, but it's also about relationship. It's about relating and justice and fairness and balance for the earth. So these points, every time we hit one of these points, it's almost like the nodal axis is moving, or karmic axis is moving, and it's reflective of women and women coming into power, into view, into prominence. Venus rules money, and we could say more. Tashi could say more about that, but these are very important things. These aren't just like airy-fairy things we're throwing out there talking about, because it might not make sense to some people.
No, that's well said, Wendy. Well said.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I love it. So it's like a rebalancing at every point. Mm-hmm. So now we come to the current Venus pentagram, and the circled one down here, 21 Leo, 11 direct, evening star. These occur every 9.5 months. And so any comments?
I just think it's fascinating to note that it's the same time it takes to make a baby. That's always fascinated me.
Well, one thing I would say about this, not so much about the Leo, but the next cycle that starts on June 3rd, 2020. I was looking at all the charts the other night, and the degree of Venus there is 13, and that Venus transit that we had in 2004 was 14 Gemini. So it's real close. So I have a sense it's going to be reflecting what came forward then for all of us.
Yeah, I agree. And I personally feel it's the internet changing to the Bitcoin currency, and that happens, it's common by June of 2020. You heard it here.
For me, what was happening for me then was I was in a deep study of the Magdalene and the Venus cycle, and the Da Vinci Code had come out. The nodes were in Virgo, Pisces. It was like the shroud had been removed, is what my experience was at that time, and the immense light pouring in. So I think we still have more gifts coming forward from that bestowal of that time.
And Venus is about money for sure. And so one of the things that the people who are trying to revolutionize the internet with Bitcoin is we won't have poor people, because we can give people in Africa, people without banks, we can give them money. We can share money. And that would be an amazing gift of the Venus-Sun conjunction on the last transit of the Sun-Venus, wouldn't it? Let's hope that that's it, or part of it.
I just wanted to mention that on each point here we have a retrograde star, a morning star, alternating with an evening star, morning star, evening star, etc. as we go around, creating a star. And then on this diagram, these are all the Venus direct stars, and they also create a pentagram. And so I've taken this into the future a little bit. So we, as Tashi pointed out, the next evening star will begin the Libra series, right? On October 22nd, 2022.
Also, sorry, do you want to say something, Tashi?
No, I said it. It's a big thing. It's a big deal.
Yeah, the other way to bring all of this down into give it some gravity is all in the pagan religions. This star this goes way back, thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Cultures all around the planet have been honoring these cycles of Venus and the elements and the timing. So each of these signs correlates to an element: earth, fire, air, water, whatever they are, right? They change. So and the cycle, the changes of the seasons. So it is about honoring earth and being deeply in touch with these cycles. And there are many ways to foster that.
And you know, Wendy, as we have been working a little bit here in EA Zoom with the Mayan astrologer, Jose Munoz, who is a friend of mine, he says that the Mayan astrology is based on the calendar of Venus. So he was like, can I have your book? And I said, sure. So I gave him an interactive PDF that he wanted to send to everybody in Guatemala, because they wanted to study what this technology has brought us about Venus. So I think as we continue to observe and correlate, which are the evolutionary astrology keywords from Jeffrey Wolf Green of how we learn evolutionary astrology, and we study these Venus cycles, we are going to really thoroughly, well, not thoroughly, we're going to get deeper and deeper understanding of natural law.
Okay, so here we have the morning stars. Starting over here in March 25, 2017, we go around and they're all Venus retrograde conjunctions with the sun. And yeah, taking place every 1.6 years. So that creates a star of its own, the morning star. And now we come to the current Venus pentagram in Leo, and each point is very important and has been in effect for a long time, with the Scorpio one changing. So on October 26, 2018, which is this one up here in Scorpio, the Venus pentagram point at 3 Scorpio emphasized critical events around abandonment, betrayal, death, or loss, depending on what house it fell in your chart. This would have been intensified for those with a prominent Scorpio archetype in their chart. This evolutionary time frame would have led to metamorphosis, resurrection, transformation, healing, and growth. Such is the bounty that is Scorpio and the gold that is Pluto. The VPP in Scorpio references important events or themes repeating every 8, 16, going back every 8, 16, 24, 30 years ago, and so on. This star point is greatly accentuated by transiting Pluto in Capricorn, emphasizing critical or cataclysmic events around abandonment, betrayal, death, or loss. This also highlights the evolutionary intention to decondition from Saturnian fears. Once again, if we do not change, then Pluto forces us to change. Now, the current chart, current Venus pentagram point, this is the chart. Any comments?
Well, I want to share one thing. It's at 21 Leo, and I always use the equinox charts. So in the American chart, 21 Leo is the ascendant, and Pluto is at 21 Capricorn. So as you so nicely pointed out to us, Linda, there is something going on between Venus and Pluto and these quincunxes. And in this next 3 months between the fall equinox and the winter solstice, we are going to have 21 Leo rising in America. And so I think this quincunx between Leo and Capricorn is really going to play out in this country about what are our values. Leo, where's our strength as and our purpose, you know, as women, really, the Sun, Venus. With Juno and Mars, I think you're going to see many more young women, like children, that we have that Greta, I can't pronounce her last name, and is protesting against climate change. That's very much the youth of the Leo in protest with Pluto, saying, what about the soul of our life? You know, what about our planet? So that's one of the things that I think this pentagram, we all know when we live through aspects of Pluto to a personal planet, the Sun or Venus, as Linda just has been saying, we change or die. We change or die. It's a rebirth potential.
Okay, and I'd also like to say that since all aspects in the quintile family correlate to creativity, then the current Venus pentagram in Leo becomes very highly emphasized as a very positive time frame for power, magic, genius expression of gifts and talents. The VPP at 21 Leo emphasizes heightened events around creativity, purpose, will, power, uniqueness, and innovativeness. This would have been a joyous time for those with a prominent natal Leo archetype, such as perhaps Leo ascendant or Leo midheaven, or a south or north node, or something like that. The Venus pentagram in Leo references important events going back 8, 16, 24 years ago, etc. And we can look at each point similarly. With the Aries point, the Aries is highly emphasized. If Aries is highly emphasized in your chart, then you can expect important events around your desire nature, initiating soul desires, identity, independence, anger, or impatience. And yeah, then we have the Capricorn and the Gemini ones. Tashi, would you like to speak about the Gemini one?
Well, I think you should put these pentagram, these transiting pentagram points into your personal chart and see where they are and see how they line up with anything in your personal chart. It's going to give you a lot of insight into what's going on. So if this 21 Leo landed on anything in your personal chart, you're probably a little bit on fire. You know, this is a Leo fire sign with creativity and partnerships, Juno and Mars, pioneering. You can see that if you've got something going on there. And if you've got something in the Gemini one that's coming up, then probably your desire at 13 Gemini and the nodes of Venus are there to communicate, has a softer, very compassionate, empathic kind of undertone. The higher frequency of Venus is very Neptunian, so you have to turn this and see where it is in your personal chart to really derive meaning from it. But for humanity, the combination of Leo, Gemini, Aries, Capricorn, and Scorpio has just ended. So we're moving out of this Scorpio outer power, you know, and moving more into partnerships and collaborative connections and partnerships with people, which I think all of these transits going through Capricorn are going to bring us to a place where we have to learn to be more cooperative and to listen to our world neighbors.
Exactly. I just want to mention something about the Capricorn star point up here at 18 Capricorn. Not for this chart, but for January 8, 2022. The VPP will be at 18 Capricorn 43. Pluto will then be at 26 degrees Capricorn. Saturn will be in Aquarius at 11 degrees. And Jupiter will have just entered Pisces. So I just found that interesting.
Well, I think we see that on the world scene. We see Brexit. We see an impeachment possibility in America. We see the Russian prime minister, or whatever he is, premier, I can't remember what he's called, Putin, just losing popularity. I mean, they're not letting that out. We see the war potential with Iran. We just see a lot of trouble with Capricorn, Pluto and Capricorn. And maybe the Venus pentagram point, I'm so optimistic, will bring a gift out of all of it, you know?
Right, and a renewal for the earth, a renewal for all things that are ruled by Venus, right?
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to say that I forgot to mention in the previous slide about the quintile aspect, Linda, is it is a Venus aspect. So there's a lot of really interesting numerology happening around it. I think maybe that's in a different slide, but a quintile is a Venus aspect and very creative, intuitive, feminine.
Is that because it's part of the 5 family?
I believe so. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's what I learned from Adam a long time ago. I'd have to look at that.
I mean, I don't know numerology very well. That's why I asked. So the Leo pentagram star point or pentagram point is Leo is half of the Leo Aquarius polarity. So in evolutionary astrology, Jeffrey Wolf Green teaches that you don't just delineate one sign, you really look at the polarity. Okay, so Leo is the subjective side. The 6 signs below the horizon are subjective, and the 6 signs above the horizon. So from east to west is below the horizon, and then from west to east, with the south being at the top of the chart and the north being at the bottom of the chart, the top part is objective. So Leo is quite subjective, and this pentagram point will show us an objective need to express ourselves creatively. Unless, of course, your Leo is in the top part of the chart, and then you have to do what we always do. You have to integrate that knowledge into the way you read your chart. But the position of where the pentagram star is in your chart points to where you will value or find. Leo is generally romantic love. It's also love of children, creativity, any kind of love. If your pentagram point, this one is occurring in the 10th house, you could meet a love interest in your workplace. In the 6th house, maybe at the gym or your yoga class. In the 3rd house, that pentagram point could show up at school or maybe even on the internet. Leo and Aquarius integrate through learning to be of service to the whole, because Aquarius is part of the big objective, the 11th house experience of the whole, and using the unique talents of the self, Leo. So strength rules Leo. This is a beautiful tarot card. You can just see the incredible imagery here. This is shared by Lee J. McCloskey, a friend of mine for decades, from his book Tarot Revisioned, which I recommend. I mean, honestly, if I had to take a book to a desert island, this is in the top 5 of my books. Look at this picture, these two, the dark lion and the white lion, and the energy, the sunlight pouring through the lion's butting heads, and the woman meditating. and her conquering the cobra, which is the transformational energy, and she's using it to help strengthen her and center herself. It's just the most beautiful imagery for Leo, this strength card. It's certainly my favorite.
Yeah, it looks like, you know, the ego and like the lower world, like, you know, coming into union there, even though they're like at war sort of, and the fire, and then she's in bliss with the Kundalini rising.
Yeah, right. And you can read about his work at leejmccloskey.com. He has a website. Probably should have put it up here. And he's on Facebook too as Lee J. McCloskey with a lot of this art. And I teach out there in Malibu sometimes, so you'll see some YouTube videos where I'm teaching there with Lee. And he discusses the cards, which is crazy fun. And I just want to commend Linda for this beautiful, beautiful gold background too. Thank you, Linda. She designed these for us today.
And I thought of adding the Sabian symbol for Leo 21, which is really Leo 22. We always read the degree ahead in Sabian symbols. And this is from Mark Edmund Jones, a carrier pigeon fulfilling its mission. Phase 142, Leo 22 degrees. Spirituality in terms of training for service to mankind. Here, the domesticated bird is seen endowed with a special significance and purpose. Leo. Leo is all about a special purpose. This refers to spiritual energies which are being used constructively and which bring to the consciousness messages from other realms. Individual realizations.
My name is Julie K. Brown. I'm an investigative reporter with the Miami Herald.
What?
For the past.
What is this?
I don't know. Somebody needs to mute themselves. Should I keep going?
Yes, thanks, Wendy.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's see. I'm just going to read that last sentence. This refers to the spiritual energies which are being used constructively and which bring to the consciousness messages from other realms. Individual realizations acquire their true meaning only as they fulfill a collective function. The release of higher energies becomes effective and valuable to the extent to which it serves a higher but concrete and definite purpose. This is the ideal of the world server. So this, in essence, speaks to the opposite of Leo, which is Aquarius, bringing that creative function, special purpose from Leo and bringing it to the world to serve humanity. And I can't help but think about that chart that we were looking at with the in conjunct from Capricorn to Leo. It's like there's such a beautiful opportunity right now to put so much structure around our creative projects with intention. Like we intend, we work at it, and consciously endow ourselves with that. There's a nice pathway to bring these creative energies forward now.
Okay, so here we have some Leo keywords, and our audiences can now take a moment to read through these while we have a short break. Okay, now we come to our last section in part one, the prenatal Venus pentagram. So I'd like to say a big thank you to Ariel Gutman for her PDF, How to Find Your Prenatal Venus Star Point. You will need that to draw up your VPP. Here is an example of a natal Venus pentagram. We start here at the foot on the left-hand side. This is the VPP before birth. We move up to the arm, then the head is in the middle of the data, and then we move along to the arm and then the foot again. We're using Wendy's chart as an example. So over here we have the data from Ariel Goodman. And number one here, August 29 at 5 Virgo, that becomes the foot. We move up to the second, to the arm, and that is 28 Gemini. Wendy's ahead prenatal VPP is 22 Aries, an evening star. And one of her arms is the VPP afterbirth at 5 Aquarius. And her second foot is VPP afterbirth at 16 Scorpio. And if your prenatal Venus head star is direct, you are an evening star. If your prenatal Venus head star is retrograde, then you are a morning star. So any comments on this before we have a break? Any questions?
I had a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
In the part where you mentioned about finding love in like different houses, what would the first house be?
Oh, I think I was saying that. The first house it's often physical, the first house. It's where you go also to exercise. It's where you're pioneering. What are some other attributes of the first house, everybody? Let's see.
I understand the first house. I was just trying to understand how it would, the Venus star point in the first house, when you were talking about finding love. How, is it like love of the self or?
Well, I think in this case, no, I think like she's got a Gemini she's got a Gemini star point in her first house on her ascendant. So she's going to magnetize love to herself from teaching. Her Jupiter and her Vesta are there. You have to really look at everything in a chart, you know. But as she expresses herself, because it's so close to the ascendant, if it's further north in that first house, if it's going towards Taurus, it's further north, then it changes. But it depends on, there's not a huge, there's some generic answers, but they may not be accurate.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at 8 volunteer charts today, and the volunteers are going to tell us how these points play out for them in the different houses. And with a star point in the first house or in Aries, independence and freedom, and you know that will be important to the person. So any relationships they have, you know, they would need those qualities.
And I'd like to just say something, Linda. I reread the Evolutionary Journal. What's its official name?
The Journal of Evolutionary Astrology.
I read it daily, probably. And what Jeffrey says about the first house, Della, is that he's talking about Pluto being there, but I kind of extrapolate, you know, for your answer. He says, if Pluto is there, for example, the person is doing something brand new in this lifetime. So I think whatever is in Aries or whatever is in the first house has this sense of newness, something we want to do that we haven't done before. And then you'd have to figure out what all that is by looking at their Mars and the ruler of the first house cusp, and how many degrees of what signs are in the first house, and all of that stuff, what the tenants are, you know, the way we do it.
I could say, since that's my chart there, that's very true about that Gemini energy for me. And Mercury, there's always some new horizon, new idea. I mean, that's typically Gemini, but I'm definitely pioneering, wanting to find my own way and with it. And it's a strong energy.
Thank you.
I had it to add maybe. Could it be finding the love once you initiate something versus staying at home waiting for it to come?
Definitely. I mean, it's a yang energy going out and, you know, collecting information with the Gemini, collecting and disseminating information. It'll be instinctual. Wendy, I mean, it's your chart.
Well, I feel like it's my absolute purpose, that it's a must in this lifetime. I mean, you guys know me from the admin. I mean, it's always something that's there. I mean, I look at all that Gemini, and then I have all that stuff in the third house, the sun, my soul purpose, and Mercury. And then my head star is in Aries, actually,
Yes.
and opposing my Mars. And that my Mars trines, it would trine that arm, right? Because it trines Jupiter, it trines my ascendant. I mean, there's a lot of support for that. When people meet me, or I do like animal communication session or something, I end up giving tons of information. People are like, wow, how do you know this? Or connect this dot, do this, do that. Like, it's all there. It's always happening. And I have a strong drive for it. I get a lot of vitality and energy from that.
And it's right on your ascendant. So it's on an angle, and it is super emphasized. And it's ruled by Mercury and Leo in the third house. And the current Venus pentagram sits in the middle of your sun and Mercury, you know, really emphasizing that third house and that Gemini star point.
Yeah, I would say too that there's some pieces that haven't quite birthed yet, because right now there's so many. I have like 5 creative projects going that there's support in every direction for all of them. It's like, wow, all this stuff is happening. So as those really take shape and form, right, all that support from all that Capricorn, I'll be probably utilizing that function more in that first house, more than ever.
Okay, thanks everyone. That brings us to the end of the first section of this meeting. And Tashi, you and I can now pause our recording, and we'll be back. Okay, welcome back everybody. We're now looking at part 2 of Venus Pentagram Leo, and over to you, Tashi.
So we've talked about the new pentagram that formed on August 14th at 21 Leo. It was the beginning of the evening star. Well, it's the precursor to the evening star that began at 6 Leo, mind my English here, 6 Libra, and that is called the heliacal rise. It means that Venus is now visible over the Earth's ascendant. Once again, she's come out of that blaring sunlight, and she's visible, and that's the heliacal rise. And this, because it's a superior conjunction, she's now an evening star. So that's the technical information that does take a while. Venus is retrograde in Scorpio, was the last one, right? Did you go to that on purpose? Yep. And we are now beginning more of this Libra feeling. So we're beginning the heliacal rise of the evening star, and then the Moon-Venus conjunctions. The Venus makes 7 gates in between being both an evening star and a morning star. So her 7 gates are when Venus and the Moon conjunct in the sky, and you can see them as evening stars. They begin lower in the horizon, and then they rise, all right? And in morning stars, the same thing. They begin lower in the horizon, and they rise. And in ancient mythology, this became the myth of Ereshkigal and Inanna. It's very, very old. And yet I believe that it was usurped by the patriarchy, because there's a lot of underworld and hysteria and death and rebirth. And I'm not so sure that we should really swallow that Kool-Aid whole, personally. I think we should rewrite it from the point of leaving patriarchal times, leaving matriarchal times, and going towards equality consciousness of the age of Aquarius. How can we give that new meaning? And I think for young astrologers, your young, beautiful minds, go after it, you know, and old, I'm going to call myself an old lady, but older astrologers like myself, I just want to really, really make a point that Jeffrey made in the 90s to me, how important it is that you read the book, The Great Cosmic Mother, and that you get out of patriarchal, hierarchical paradigms. So here, okay, we can move to the next one. Wendy's going to talk about it.
Okay, so October 26, 2018, last year, Venus was retrograde in, the Venus star was retrograde in Scorpio. And at that time, there is something called the overtone of a Venus cycle. And that cycle that began was in Libra. It's a Libra overtone. The morning star rise actually occurred at 29 degrees Libra. That's why the overtone is Libra, even though Venus was retrograde in Scorpio on the 26th. It actually moved back into Libra. So all of this time, there has been a Libra overtone, which continues now throughout this new Leo initiation point. The actual Venus pentagram point in Libra will begin October 22nd, 2022 at 29 Libra. The current Libra overtone cycle has initiated the relational and communicative and harmonious side of Venus. The number 22 is about cooperation and balance in numerology. The ascent of Venus is when she is still retrograde and very close to the Earth, and she reaches maximum elongation from the Sun and begins her rising crest as the morning star. It's actually the eastern morning sky. She has significant influence in this position, setting a focus in time, which brings an unveiling or foreshadowing, setting a tone based on the sign she is in for the following 18 months. Currently, September 19th, 2019, Venus was at 6 degrees Libra, and she was rising then as the evening star. She crested as the evening star. 10 degrees ahead of the Virgo sun, yes. So she's ahead, which means that she's an evening star. The evening star cycle goes from September 2019 to May 2020, before Venus retrogrades in Gemini at 21 degrees. The new Venus, like a rosebud, the new Venus phase cycle, like a rosebud, will begin with a Gemini overtone June 9th, 2020, with a VPP in Gemini also. And over here on the right, we have the Venus retrogrades for the future, just the dates there. And we're going to go into that more as we go through these cycles, the meetings that we'll be having.
And so the Venus evening star that is ascending is going to start the first gate of the Venus moon conjunctions on the 29th of September at 18 Libra, 44 minutes. And so from my book, I wrote, Libra is the time when a shift from the subjective to the objective consciousness takes place. As we embrace our social needs on a new moon Venus conjunction, it is quite likely we will attract new relationships. We must learn to listen. That is the purview of Libra. Listen to others. Some of the issues that might come up. Are we on a two-way street? And that means, are our needs being met? Are we listening to the needs of others? We must re-examine codependency. So really in Libra, what we're really trying to do is figure out how to use the Aries aspect of the need to be self-honoring and the Libra aspect of how to be considerate to others. And that's how we get onto that two-way street. And if we're self-honoring, we're going to make sure our needs are being met. And if we're listening to the needs of others, we're going to make sure that we're being considerate.
Thanks, Tashi and Wendy. That was great. So now we come to cosmology. Womankind recovering her original nature. This is from Mary Blue, who wrote the book Lilith, Keepers of the Flame. The feminine form of consciousness guides descent, existence, and ascent. Sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. Just 1 second. Here we go. Involutionary forces, and involution means existing forms going out of form. They must be destroyed. Then new forms can come forth. So, involutionary forces have now culminated, where a dynamic reversal is underway, marked by the resurgence of powerful inner spiritual forces that seek to reunite all of us, both female and male, to our native root. These shifting dynamics are being championed by the feminine creating principle of nurture or yin. Thus, they are of an evolutionary nature, presenting us with the opportunity to grow from what we have learned while reuniting us back to our native root. In the process, to unleash our true potential as we recover our wholeness. Its fruition exists as our birthright, and not only are we challenged to recover this lost wholeness for ourselves, but more importantly, to repair the severed connection for our children's sake, all of them, who dwell beside us and share our sacred earthly garden, human, animal, plant, mineral, and elemental.
And so, as many of you know from having met me or hear me talk, I did have the great opportunity to study with Joseph Campbell when I was a young woman. And so I've been trying to integrate his hero's journey into the astrological cycles. And so here in this one, I guess we are equating the evening star with a hero ventures forth from the world of common day into a region of supernatural wonder. Fabulous forces are there encountered, and a decisive victory is won. The hero then comes back from his mysterious adventure with a power to bestow boons on his fellow man. And so that's called the return. And I think we have to do quite a lot of correlation and observation to put Joseph Campbell's cycles into our astrological cycles, but they're very, very valuable.
Tashi, one thing that I did when I was doing a lot of studying around Saturn and also mythology and Joseph Campbell is he talks about bringing the boon, you're crossing the threshold, and Erin Sullivan did a lot of work around that, crossing the threshold, and she talks about it going from the 6th to the 7th house into the house of Libra to bring the boon to the collective.
That's interesting. Okay. I mean, I can't just, you know, in movies. So what happened is everybody in Hollywood, where I worked for a long time, discovered Joseph Campbell because he was working with the Star Wars writer and producer George Lucas. And so when people found out about that, they started trying to understand the hero's journey, and they took apart his book and they turned it into basically the blueprint for how to write a movie. And so the return with the boon is more like Capricorn, I think, but I don't want to argue because Erin is so brilliant.
Well, I actually might have said that wrong. It could be like a full Saturn return, like the second Saturn return, right?
Yeah, I don't even know. I mean, we cross the thresholds many, many times. There is a threshold from the 6th to the 7th house, and there's a huge threshold at the midheaven that we cross as well. So I'm not really, I mean, we'd have to do a whole class on that. We can't just extrapolate it.
Yeah, I can look and see what it actually says,
Okay.
what I remember. Mm-hmm.
And it's in my book, if anybody's interested in looking how I coordinated it to astrology. It's in my book, Mysteries of the Venus Pentagram.
Okay, so our volunteers, we are having our first gate meeting next week, and I've been doing a lot of research on the chakras. So even from this, I've been learning so much new things about it that I'm going to share. We'll share next week. So for today, the chakras are spinning wheels of light and are an energetic system that houses our Kundalini life force, our prana, which is breath. The rate at which the chakras spin too fast or too slow influence the balance of our health and our ability to function optimally, and thus our ability to offer life and our service to it with the highest quality available. Trauma, stress, and fears are the biggest impetus to optimal functioning of our energy. Each chakra corresponds to different areas of our emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual lives. With each Venus gate in this evening star phase, we will focus on each chakra, beginning with the first chakra at our next meeting. So with the Venus star, the first gate correlates to the first chakra, which is opposite of the morning star.
Okay, so many astrologers base the Venus Gates journey on the myth of Inanna. She is the immortal queen of heaven, the feminine form of consciousness who guides descent, existence, and ascent. The woman's sacred natural function is the conduit, woman's natural function is the conduit between the worlds. The function of womankind's powerfully intuitive connection to time cycles was immortalized through Inanna, the immortal queen of heaven. Several ancient hymns praise Inanna in her role as the goddess of the planet Venus. The unconscious Lilith, symbol for the embodied soul, becomes conscious of her divine nature and learns control over her powers through her projection as Inanna. The immortal Queen of Heaven was esteemed as the tutelary deity of sexuality and new life. Inanna's handmaidens, represented by Lilith, taught male members of the community about the proper use of sex. These women, Inanna's daughters of heaven, were known as pure, spotless, holy women. They served as teachers and guardians of matriarchal initiatory sexual traditions, once considered a great gift to civilization from Inanna, the Queen of Heaven, to humankind.
Okay, so this chart shows that here we are, September 29th, 2019 coming up, which is just after the new moon, and we're at the first gate, and Venus will be at 18 Libra, and the root chakra, physical body, the planets associated with the root chakra are Saturn, Uranus, and Pluto. Pluto being at the very core, Uranus at this middle layer, and Saturn at the outer layer. And the basic tenets of the first chakra are security, safety, survival, basic needs, physical identity, grounding, support, foundation. And what I can say on a deeper level is that the first chakra is the foundation for the Kundalini. It's the foundation for all the other chakras. So there's it's a very important base to have this base functioning. And when that root chakra is tight or influenced by particularly familial and cultural components, right, Saturn, Capricorn issues, we can be, that chakra can be very, very tight. And that can bring anxiety and all kinds of other physical issues, and especially not about receiving and abundance. So the chakra, it's important for the chakra to be open. And in the evening star phase at this first gate, it's about the last gate at the morning star was releasing what didn't serve us at that root chakra, at that last gate. What were we letting go of? And this evening star phase is about gathering and bringing in that which does serve the root chakra, that which serves that function in our lives. So that's what we'll be looking at more closely next week. And everyone can see through these other gates. They can take a look at this on a deeper level. The dates are on here for each gate, which is the moon Venus conjunction. And in my experience, these are very, very sacred times. The moon and Venus are, in modern astrology, those are the only two planets that are feminine. So when that conjunction happens, I'm almost always extremely blissed out. I'm receiving some kind of download. I want to be internal and quiet and spending time and journaling or whatever it is that I'm guided to do in that inner listening, the inner quality of the evening star energy.
And I've been teaching the Venus moon gates for a couple of years since Linda and all of us in the EA Zoom meeting started to study the myth of Inanna. And these gates And the idea of the chakras are correlating to the myth of Inanna, where she is, as Wendy has been talking to you about, taking off at the last morning gate, her last thing. And now as she's coming back to the world from the underworld, which she was never in, she was in sunlight, she's putting things back on. So we will observe, correlate, and share the experiences from gates 1 to 7 over the next 7 cycles of this Moon-Venus conjunction. So the first one in Libra may be a call to adventure and a narrowing of focus and direction. In Libra, that would be a narrowing of focus and direction in your relationships and in how you learn to listen and in how you manage your interaction with others with self-honoring and consideration. So we're going to absolutely study this and work together as women to observe and correlate how these gates work, because my humble opinion is we need lots more observation and correlation to really, really know them. And, you know, I've written a book on it, but I don't believe that I'm an expert in any way. I think all of us need more observation and correlation, which Linda's going to talk about.
So now we've come to the volunteers section, and our volunteers are Anya, Dawn, Jennifer, Lynn, Phoebe, Sarah, Sue, and Wanda. And today we will present feedback from these volunteers on their natal Venus pentagram, or prenatal Venus pentagram, it's the same thing, and the current pentagram in Leo. On October 3rd, next week, our feedback from our volunteers for Venus Gate 1 will be presented at the October 3 meeting. So stay tuned for that. Join us then. And Wendy?
Okay, so I'm going to read through the questions which all the volunteers received ahead of time. 1, what is the sign, house, and ruler of the head star of your prenatal Venus pentagram point? Which everybody in the volunteers, I think Linda gave everybody their charts, and you can find that at this link here, Ira Gutman's link, the PDF that can direct you to figure it out if you don't know it and you want to know it. And the questions: is your natal Venus pentagram a morning star or an evening star? Using a tight orb, is your head star aspecting any planets, points, or angles? What are the innate natural gifts or talents correlating to your head star, and how has it played out in your life? What are the signs, houses, and rulers of the other 4 points of your natal Venus pentagram, which are the arms and the feet? What are the innate natural gifts or talents correlating to these 4 points? The Venus pentagram moves back 2 degrees every 8 years. Can you detect a thread of meaning to previous points, 8 years ago, 16 years ago? Tell us what happened. What house, so this is the current Venus pentagram, that point that I'm talking about now in Leo. What house is 21 degrees Leo in your chart? Is 21 degrees Leo aspecting any natal planets? The ruler of the current pentagram is the sun. Where is the sun in your chart? What innate natural gifts or talents correlating to the current pentagram point in Leo are you developing or expressing? The Venus pentagram moves back everything I just read. Same questions. Can you detect a thread of meaning to previous points, 8 years ago, 16 years ago, from this current Venus pentagram point?
Okay, so it's important that we use observation and correlation. Astrology is a correlative subjective study of the relationship between the macrocosmic motion of the planets and the microcosmic activity of humans on Earth. The planets have been assigned their symbolism and interpretations based on thousands of years of observation. It is not true that correlation indicates causation. Rather, the planets are mirrors or reflectors of human activity. In EA, we were taught that the astrologer should ask the client questions. Based on listening, the astrologer can orientate their intuition to the client's actual reality. The symbols in the chart are orientated to what has been observed through listening. Now we're going to go to Phoebe's chart first because Jennifer could not make it. So Phoebe, are you there?
I'm here.
Fantastic. Hi there. Welcome. So
you.
would you first of all like to read us out your feedback to the natal morning star questions?
Okay. So my head star of my Venus pentagram point is at 3 degrees Aquarius in the 8th house, ruled by Uranus in the 5th. I'm a morning star. My head star is opposite my natal Venus, exact, separating just by 10 minutes, and that happens in the 2nd house. I have a sextile from that head star to my Neptune sitting in Sagittarius in the 6th house, which is making, and then also the head star is making a trine to my Pluto in Libra in the 4th, and it's also trining my Pluto polarity point in Aries in the 10th, and I have an inconjunct to my ascendant Cancer and descendant Capricorn to a tight orb as well. So I'm going to just up to 3 degrees as a tight orb. Okay, so the innate gifts are, so I was going to just add actually that I'm having a transit, that Chiron is transiting my Pluto polarity point at the moment, which I thought was quite significant. So my innate gifts are the ability to be a survivor, and I've really watched myself coming into awareness recently for reasons that I'll tell you about soon. I have an onward and upward spirit. I'm certainly very resourceful, which mirrors my 8th house. So I'm good at raising the vibration at parties, and I've always been able to do that. You'd find me on tables, on speakers, you know, in the rave scene. I've got a have a go mentality. You know, I believe in the as above, so below principle. So I find myself very celestial. I was taught by nuns and I loved them. You know, they were very warm. They weren't sisters of mercy. And when I had to pick up the archetype of a nun just the other weekend at a celebration of being a woman weekend, when I got into the nun archetype, I was just looking up at the stars, and I'd say it was my favorite archetype. I'm an activist. I was at Occupy London in 2011. I'm certainly futuristic, being drawn from hippiedom, born into hippiedom. I was at Glastonbury for the Venus star point at 2012, and I didn't even know what I was doing there, and I really didn't understand what was going on, which is a bit bonkers, but there you go, I was there. And the lady that invited me, it was her birthday on the same day as mine, funnily enough. So my qualities is that I have a heart-centered approach to life. You know, I do celebrate life. And, you know, I've recently been involved in some heart opening ceremony just this last full moon. I certainly identify with the kind of power couple ideology, which is probably written into my 8th house. So I am looking for a relationship. The celebration of being a woman is about holding the space for other women. So that is another one of my qualities which has recently come to me, is that I'm finding a deep reverence for women, which has just come about certainly in this last month since I went to this weekend. And I have that ability to hold the space with not, it's not even patience, it's just I was able to just breathe in their pain and breathe out the love, and it was just a beautiful thing to do. I spread good ideas, so that's certainly an Aquarian archetype for the head star. So yeah, so do you want to know what's been happening since
no, not yet. We'll go on to the Leo pentagram next. Did any of our co-hosts want to make any comments about this natal morning star first? Okay, well, I've got a couple of notes here for you. So your natal Venus is in Leo, very conducive to the current Leo pentagram. Your inner relationship to self attracts people of the same vibration. Venus is ruled by your sun in Leo, needs good communication, respect, warmth, and acknowledgement of your ideas and points of view. Your Aquarius head star, ruled by Uranus in the 5th. You need a certain amount of freedom and independence in your intimate relationships. But you also need attention from your partner. This can sometimes be a bottomless pit, need for attention. So they're my few notes. Tashi and Wendy, did you have anything to add to this?
Oh, I can certainly talk about, you know, when I look at a chart, the EA principle is that we begin, no matter what we're doing, with Pluto and with the nodes. And so looking at your nodes, which are close to your pentagram point, I give kind of white orbs. You have Jupiter, Juno, and Ceres in the 9th house as skip steps opposite Mars as a skip step to these Gemini nodes. So I think it's really very, very helpful that the Gemini pentagram is on your south node, and that south node is natally very close to the nodes of Venus. So I think that's helping you understand that you have things you have to learn, and that 9th house is talking about in Jupiter, natural law. So it's very instinctual for you to want to learn natural law. But in Pisces, Jupiter, Jeffrey teaches that in the 9th house, we're learning relativity of the truth and we're learning natural law. But Pisces is the absolute wholeness of all that is, how it's all working together. And so it looks like your Jupiter Juno series is really attempting to go past a skip step where you couldn't integrate Mother Nature and self-empowerment with your understanding of natural law and religion. So it's interesting to me that you talk about the nuns and the religion, because as a skip step, your Jupiter probably has to transcend religion. And I don't mind religions, don't get me wrong. But the conformity, the consensus conformity is not going to teach you natural law, except that it's a part of living, you know. And there's very good reasons to be a conformist in some areas. But when we're studying natural law, we really have to get out of the way and pay attention to Mother Nature. And so I think your Mars-Jupiter opposition is kind of a push-pull, kind of interesting foot on the gas, foot on the brakes, and a lot of foot on the gas. Teaching you the humility and the graciousness to learn to study the cosmos and align yourself with the cosmos. And your pentagram star at 26 Gemini is going to get a huge kick next year when we have a Gemini star coming along. So I think you're going to get a lot of information and downloads and help going forward. And of course, you just had the summer one on your sun. And so that's giving you a 3rd house sun, a lot of information, a lot of new study, like what you'll learn today about yourself, you know, as a volunteer. And I think, you know, when you talk about your Leo party energy of that Venus, Sun, Mercury, Leo, but the Virgo, Mars, as a skip step, talks about really taking all your charismatic, fabulous juice, you know, that heart energy, and learning to figure out how to serve. And it's a skip step to serve and to teach. So I think you have to write books.
That's what I was just thinking too, Tashi. She's a writer.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah.
The humility.
Yeah, and the South Node in Gemini, you know, the Neptune conjunct the North Node in Sag is lovely, but it doesn't necessarily want to slow itself down to write the books, but you have to.
Okay, so that's resonating.
That revelatory.
Absolutely, and it's resonating because it's been brought to me just this August when I did a divine integration retreat that I need to write a book.
Okay, great. So look, we have about 10 minutes for each volunteer, so we will have to move on a bit quicker.
Okay.
So we've come to the current star. No, we've still got this, the current star in Leo. Could you please give us your feedback on this?
Yeah. Okay, I'll try and be as quick as I can and honor everybody else. So, after my divine integration retreat at the beginning of August, and I went into the Lion's Gate around the 8th of August, I started to have mystical experience. So I am a student of Kundalini Yoga, which I do most days, and so what that's taken me into is from an intoxicating daily practice to then I was getting mystical experiences and dreams. So that all started to happen on the run up to the Venus star point coming in, to where all my planets are sitting there. So I'm getting a lot of celestial fire and feeling that I'm getting updates from my DNA, and I was getting the downloads in a kind of 6D fashion in my own daily practice. And I was working with kids on a daily basis, and I had the opportunity to speak to them for 20 minutes. I was hair braiding their hair. I was putting gems on their faces this year, which was completely different. And I was giving them an opportunity to be themselves, and I wanted them to claim their sovereignty. And I was putting jewels on there, asking them where they wanted everything. Then I let them make all their own decisions. And I had a wonderful summer. And it just went from strength to strength, really. I mean, the Sabian symbol so speaks to me. So there was this real flowering into so many spheres that's happened since my birthday on the 18th of August. And I've just had the most profound time and deep reverence with women. And I feel now that I'm ready to take that from the kind of Taurus inner side, bringing that now into the Libra side, where I'm now getting involved into community in a big way.
That is fantastic feedback. Thank you so much. It's really great. I took this Venus star into the future. As you can see, it starts off with Leo, but we've taken it into the future a bit. So your next morning star in 2020 at 13 Gemini will conjunct your South Node, bringing up elements from the past for resolution. You will need to let go of old information to make way for the new. This will allow a new self-image in Leo to emerge and make evolution possible. So big changes are ahead for you. And Tashi and Wendy, any comments?
That's brilliant, Linda. Let's see, what else could I add?
I was just going to say lovely shining forth of all that Leo and play and creativity and children just sounds wonderful.
And I think you should look forward to the 29 Libra new evening star on your Vesta and on your Uranus. I can see you really having figured out how to use your astrology and use your work to really help. I think you're, what we call you a daemon soul. So I would go to both the book, the evolutionary, oh God, Linda, what's that book called? The journal. No, it's not the journal. I just use it every day and I don't even know what it's called.
It's
the EA glossary.
Yeah, the glossary.
And go to Jeffrey Wolf Green's School of Evolutionary Astrology and go on the message board and search for Daemon Soul. It's free, everybody. And there's decades of very valuable information from the best evolutionary astrologer. I mean, he started it. He's light years ahead of the rest of us. And, you can see Linda's a brilliant astrologer. And the information on the message board will really help you understand your Daemon Soul.
Thank you, Tashi. I will.
And Satnam.
Phoebe, Phoebe, thank you so much. Your feedback was absolutely excellent. And we look forward to your sharings on October 3rd for Venus Gate 1.
Me too. I'm going to leave.
Fantastic.
And I'll catch up with you then. Thank you, ladies. Take care.
Thank you. Bye, Phoebe. Okay.
Pleasant dreams.
Now we're moving on to Dawn. Hi there, Dawn. Is Dawn with us?
I am. Hi.
Oh, hi. Hi, Dawn. Could you please give us your answers to the questionnaire?
Certainly.
Thank you.
So my head star is at 28 Gemini in the 8th house, ruler Mercury at 24 Virgo in the 11th house, and my Venus is a morning star My Venus pentagram starts on a morning star. And using a tight orb, it's on my north node at just less than 2 degrees, which seems to really make sense in my chart because Venus and the Sun are in mutual reception, and Venus is the top planet in my chart at the top. But also that head star is trine to my Saturn, less than 1 degree, and more widely, less than 4 degrees square to my Mercury, which is the ruler of that north node and the head star. So innate gifts and talents would be, I am an avid investigator, always learning, always working to grow intellectually and share ideas, millions of countless ideas all the time. Some I don't get to act on, but I have them. And signs and houses of the rulers of the 4 other points. Do we need to go into that? Probably not. 4 pentagram points are aspecting other planets' points and angles. So 19 Scorpio is trine my moon and square the midheaven. And 22 Aries corresponds to the axes and planets of many family members and close relationships. While it is found in my 6th house there, it's also trine to my Venus, which speaks to just that as well. The 5 Aquarius is also conjunct Psyche, less than 3 degrees in the 3rd house there. And then 5 Virgo is, interestingly, at my progressed Mars during my last marriage. And then innate and natural gifts and talents received from this beautiful Venus head star, or the whole pentagram actually, correlating to each would be that investigation drive. I mean, I really live to figure out the why of things. And it's trine my moon, so I'm very comfortable sharing emotionally and being a mothering type of woman with my family, being the matriarch of the family at this point, in fact, most of my life. And then I think that's about it for there. Worrying about time crunch. So, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, were you continuing?
Yeah, okay.
Oh.
Unless you don't want me to.
Oh, you can, if you have something to say, yes.
Okay, nothing really further, but that talent for communication indicated by the Gemini head star is also shown at 5 Virgo, which is trine my descendant, and was well supported by my father. He always had me looking up any questions, and I had millions, so he always sent me to the encyclopedia or the dictionary or whatever resource we had around. So.
Also,
That's great, John. Yeah, go ahead, Tashi.
I want to tell you that you were born with that first Gemini. Your head star is the first time that we had a Gemini pentagram point. It began on June 19th, 1964. You can see it there. And that's one of your points. I guess in this version of everything, it's your head star. And so
Right.
it's very, very significant. When I've done many, many, many charts as I was studying this, people who are born with these first ingresses, we'll call it an ingress, that's a technical term that means something's going into a sign, an ingress of a Venus pentagram point into a sign, they're really, really driven, driven. And the fact that your north node is there means that your investigative, journalistic kind of mind is driven. And because Mercury is squaring your nodes with Uranus, Pluto, and just Uranus, Pluto, and Mercury, this is really a lifetime where you're going to be able to use that, I believe, Gemini head star to help you learn evolutionary astrology, Uranus, Pluto, Mercury, learn something new, and then use it professionally, 10th house, and in community, 11th house. So here you are, being a good guinea pig and being an example.
Here I am, and thank you, Tashi. Exactly.
Thank you.
Well, I'm glad that my notes are lining up with your feedback, Dawn. So your head star in Gemini in the 8th conjunct the North Node, a powerful forward momentum in the collection and dissemination of information, and you really are like that. And the ruler of the head star is Mercury in Virgo in the 11th, squaring the nodes. Skip steps are being recovered by consistent focus on depth astrology and the study, understanding, and communication of the language of astrology. This is assisted by the Scorpio foot in the 1st, Aquarius foot in the 3rd, and also the Aries arm in the 6th. Aquarius expresses really well in the 3rd house.
Yeah.
We must study the same thing, Linda.
Yeah, it's all the same thing, but if you do the Pluto paradigms, that would be wonderful if you could begin with the Pluto paradigms for each chart. That would be really, really good.
Sure. Well, the ruler of her South Node, Mercury, as we've discussed that, and then the ruler of her North Node is Jupiter. So the Mercury-Jupiter relationship is a trine, which certainly means that you're going to find the teachers, the one-on-one experiences. Eventually you will counsel people. Have you begun to do that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so that's good. So, when the rulers of the North and the South Node are trining in an earth sign, there's this grounded opportunity to collect the skip step. And I think many evolutionary astrologers have some sort of skip step where they had to learn evolutionary astrology in this life. I certainly did. And I think many of us do, because evolutionary astrology, for those of you who are just learning about it, is a high level of evolutionary momentum in your life. It's not just fortune telling at all. It's how to evolve.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to the current star in Leo. Dawn, would you like to relay your feedback about this, please?
Certainly. So that is right in my 10th on my part of fortune on my Venus, and it is 3 degrees from the midheaven. Also squaring Jupiter a little wider on that, but 4 or 5 degrees there. I'm not sure how wide you wanted to go on those orbs. And square to Neptune, which is about 5 degrees as well. And the ruler of that is my sun in Libra in the 11th house, again in mutual reception there. And things that I'm doing now, I started a class on this past Tuesday, another class, because I really want to formalize all my education. I've been self-taught on astrology since forever. I've had a couple of classes, William Stick-Evers and such, but I just started a course that I'm going to, investigate to see if I really want to go with the whole hog on it. And the whole goal being to fill in any possible gaps. I mean, if I have gaps in my self-education, I wouldn't know, because you don't know what you don't know unless somebody tells you what you don't know. So I'm going to have somebody tell me and see if there's anything I'm missing. I feel like that's important for me. And, then I have to run it through all my filters first, right? But I'm really driven to do that, and I feel very strongly about it. So I'm on board with it. I'm also finding a new dedication to really bring what I know out there. And my friends can attest to that. So as far as the Venus pentagram moving backwards every 8 years, what's gone on. 8 years ago, 2011, the Venus pentagram point would have been at about 23 Leo, which was exact to my Venus. I married in that year. It was a very short-lived marriage, and rightfully so, but that just significantly points out my Venusian opposition to Saturn and square to Jupiter in the 7th house. It very much tells the story. So that hitting there was pretty key. Also 16 years ago then, the Venus pentagram point would have been at 25 Leo, and at that point I left a career in finance and started at a very the largest telecom company in customer service and sales, which allowed me then to buy a home for my family in January of 2004. And I've sold that since in 2015, but that was key for me, very important to a 10th house Venus pentagram point. And then 24 years ago, that would have been at 27 Leo, which is my sun moon midpoint. And I was traveling through the Oklahoma City the morning of the Oklahoma City bombing. And that was very key to a very key event to my life events as well. And, just being the sun moon midpoint really, in a nutshell, brought my life together to where I understood, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and not listening to all the rest of these things. So it was beautiful. And that's it.
Well, thank you for going back so far. That's fantastic. And just a few notes that I've made on your chart. Venus conjunct part of fortune is on the midheaven, highlighting the current star in Leo. And the 13 Gemini morning star will sit on the 8th house cusp, intensifying your studies and perhaps wrapping up some karma with others. And also the 29 Libra arm, or is it a foot? I'm sorry, no, it's an arm. In the 12th house will bring more of the quality of unconditional love into your life. So very beautiful.
Nice. Trying my Saturn, that could have effects as well.
Good. So, Tashi and Wendy, do you have anything to say, or anything further to say, or shall we move on?
I'll let Wendy take a turn. I don't have anything to add.
Well, one thing I was thinking when you were talking about the Mercury, Jupiter, Earth signs, I was thinking, how's all that Capricorn supporting all this right now for you, Dawn?
I feel that it is well. I'm spending my time with the kids, the vast portion of my time with my 4-year-old and 1-year-old grandsons. And I can tell you that I need to up my game and communicate with adults more because I'm just like the gaga goo goo is turning my mind to mush a little bit. I am relearning, I should say, other ways of communicating to get the ideas across and to teach. I'm doing a lot of teaching, of course, but I need to interact with adults more.
Here we are.
Here we are. It's so beautiful. Thank you.
And Pisces is opening that 5th house there.
Yeah.
You have to wade through the mist with all the kids. Yeah. Children language. Yeah.
It's been so fun. But yeah, my brain feels a little mushy.
Dawn, thank you so much. That was fantastic feedback. Looking forward to seeing you next week for Gate 1.
Thank you. I'll be there.
Okay. Now we're moving on to Sue. Hi there, Sue.
Hello.
Hello there, Sue. Would you like to relay your feedback, please?
Sure.
Great.
Well, my head star is in Aquarius. It's in my 7th house. And it's, I noticed that it's conjunct the south node of Neptune. The ruler of it is my Uranus in Cancer in the 12th house. It's a morning star. let's see, and then using tight orbs, it is within a degree of a quincunx to my Virgo sun, which is also another one of my star points. It is also conjunct Uranus within 3 degrees, and it is trine my moon within 3 degrees. And then, let's see, so then the innate natural gifts or talents. Well, my career was in technology, my main career. And Uranus was conjunct my head star when I started working at the bank, which was my major employer in this career. And I discovered doing that I can pretty much talk to just about anyone about technological subjects and kind of translate it to regular talk. I've been studying and let's see, around that time, Uranus, which rules it, was conjunct my Mercury, and then square my Uranus, and then trine my head star. So astrology has been, pretty important in my life. The other, do you want me to talk about the arms and feet?
Yes.
Okay. So the, let's see, the one, my arms are Aries in my 10th house, and Scorpio in my 5th house. So both of those are, traditionally ruled by Mars. But it's the Scorpio one is square my Pluto, ruled by Pluto and square my Pluto, and that star, that arm star, will perfect by progression in a couple more years. And then, let's see, the arms are Virgo, let's see, no, the feet are Virgo and Cancer. And let's see, well, I think the Mars part kind of speaks to I tend to relate instinctively. My first impressions are generally hold. They tell me whether I want to go deeper into whatever the relationship is or whatever the subject is. And my feet, well, my Virgo sun is conjunct one of them, and then let's see, the asteroid Lucifer is conjunct the Cancer one, and I feel like that I do possess the qualities of being supportive, especially when they're expressed by both parties, and the topics that are kind of favored would be health, diet, food, animals, Virgo and Cancer things.
Thank you, Sue. So just a quick note about your head star 10 Aquarius in the 7th house. A love for perhaps, friends and getting together with other people, comparing and contrasting views. It's double air there. You are a loyal friend, ruled by Uranus Cancer in the 12th house, conjunct the foot star point. You provide a strong and compassionate emotional foundation in your friendships, I have found. And so Tashi, over to you.
I think, you know, that having a Venus pentagram point star on your sun is a pretty powerful thing. And it's given you a great deal of strength with your Sun, Saturn, South Node conjunction. So we really study these nodes. And your Sun, Saturn, South Node is the ruler of your Pluto, Venus conjunction. So it's stabilized all that Leo, and it has given you the humility and the service that the Leo Pluto so desperately needs, you know, the me generation Pluto Leo from 37 to 57, 20 years, is really intentionally supposed to be very creative. And I know you are very creative, but they're really supposed to move towards this Virgo. And so here you are, a builder and a person with a great foundation, and probably also, hopefully, a writer. With the
Yes, hopefully.
Yeah, with the North Node up there in the 9th house, I think all of us, one of the things that Jose, the Mayan astrologer, said is we need to leave a legacy, you know, and I really believe that your Neptune-Juno conjunction in Libra and your Mercury can leave a legacy from your inner emotional strength. You'll be able to write about that with that moon in Gemini.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Sue, let's move on to your current star in Leo. What would you like to share here?
Well, it is right between my Venus-Pluto conjunction in the 2nd house, ruled, you know, as you guys just said, by my Virgo sun. So, and so right now, what's going on with me and the gifts and talents that I'm developing, one of which is kind of physical resources. I'm working on I'm doing physical therapy to stabilize my back, because I've had a back issue for years. I'm trying to, you know, work on my balance, which is has gotten worse over the years, working on my diet and exercise, my art. And probably the biggest thing is related to the last few Venus stars. Well, there's 2 things. One is that 4 years ago, I lost, and I started losing all of my animals one by one, and I had a lot of them. But I also started doing printmaking and memorializing my pets in that. And 8 years ago, I was I was finishing up a program in past life regression, deep memory process. And now I am actually beginning to make money at it. I had a client contact me on August 15th, you know, just within a couple of weeks after this Venus star. So
a day.
One day, yeah, right there.
Yeah. Well, actually, yeah, you're right. And then the other thing that I kind of a little epiphany that came to me about with my Venus star being in Virgo, the Venus star for people born between, say, 1938 and about 1954 are all within a couple of degrees of my sun. And it's even within 8 degrees from going back to 1922 up until 1977. And I think that gives me the ability to connect with people through that Virgo, which is kind of standoffish at times, shy, I guess is more like it. But once I'm one-on-one with somebody, I can I can talk about anything, as I was saying before.
Thank you, Sue. Oops.
Yeah, no, that's about it. I mean, you know, the other thing is that the Saturn, my Saturn is conjunct, I think the star point of my parents.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Really good.
yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to say, just be careful of self-criticism with that current star in the second house.
Ah,
Also, the Capricorn star fairly recently entered your sixth house, and you have shared with us your health issues about your back. And Capricorn, of course, rules the bones, the skeleton, and probably the back.
yeah.
So there will be a focus on that. So good
And
luck
Leo
with
too, the
that.
back.
Yeah, and good luck with that. So we really must move on. Tashi and Wendy, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, we've got it. I mean, we're so far over. We're at least 20 minutes past our ending time, right?
Exactly. So let's move quickly.
I think
Thank you.
answer quickly.
Thank you, Sue. That was excellent. So Lynn, if you could please share your feedback with us.
Let's see. I'm an evening star, and my head star is 3 degrees Cancer, conjunct my midheaven. And it's ruled by the moon in the 12th house, which is conjunct one of the arms of my pentagram. And let's see where I'm. The other arm at 23 Aries is ruled by Mars in the second house in Scorpio, which is where one of the close to one of the feet at 21 Scorpio. And then I have another foot in the 5th house at 9 Aquarius, ruled by Uranus up in the 10th house in Cancer. And gifts and talents. I've been a mother. That's been my career. Aquarius or astrology has been my hobby. Astrology and art are both big hobbies for me. And I'm very much a nurturing person. I love my family. In fact, I'm the one who has all the family gatherings. I have come from a large family of 7 kids, but I'm the one who has the gatherings at my house. And I'm very much into health. I do a lot of research on health, and I love research, which also goes along with the Scorpio energy, the 12th house moon energy. And then, like I said, astrology is one of my favorite things. And I love cooking. I love just my kids. I love being with my kids. Those are my favorite people. That was really the best time of my life, was when I was raising my kids. That's where I have really fond memories. Let's see, from there, am I covering everything? Remind me if I'm not, because I'm not sure.
That pretty much says that you, just Aries, just the 7th house one.
Oh, let's see. Yeah, that's ruled by Mars and Scorpio. The Aries arm is conjunct Eris in my chart. And relationships is kind of a main focus in my life, and it is at this point in my life right now too. I'm really re-examining all my relationships and how I have put so many people ahead of myself and left my own needs uncared for. So that's something I've had to really, for some reason, the last, I'd say since 2011 has been a huge examination of my entire life. And every relationship I've had has come under scrutiny, just to really, I think I've had a real difficult time in relationships. Even though I've had a happy relationship, there's a lot of, I do a lot more for my relationships than I get in return. So I'm trying to learn how to balance those things out and how to speak up for my needs, which has always been hard for me to do. You'd think being a leader.
Lynn, let me speak to a little bit of this. Your Pluto in Leo is squaring the node. It's conjunct your South Node, which is very saint-like, all right, with Ceres. So there's the desire for motherhood, and there's the head star in Cancer. But the Jupiter-Mars, which is this Aries arm, is a skip step. And so the examination of why you marry, who you marry, what you believe, where you're comfortable, your frog in the well scenarios, those are all definitely going to have to be addressed, you know. And I think as the last Scorpio star has ended, then you're going to start looking at it maybe more spiritually through the Neptune Saturn ascendant aspect of yourself, and less through the Pluto South Node series. And I think that will probably really be a very huge revelation for you, but that's not till 2022. But these Venus gates, hopefully with your Libra and Wendy's overtone of Libra, she can maybe speak to this, should maybe help you really get some insight into your skip steps. But you know, you really have to take responsibility for your skip steps, right?
Absolutely, yes. That's one of the things I'm working on right now, is what part did I play in everything? And we, you know, what it really boils down to is we create our own reality. So,
and I think in the 8th house, I know Jeffrey teaches this, we're really curious how we begin to get the tools in Scorpio in the 8th house. In the 4th house, we get the emotional inner self-reliance to take responsibility. And in the 8th house, we can surrender enough to learn to merge with the universe, so we can begin to realize there are some tools we can use to co-create with reality. And in the 12th house, where you have your moon, we can actually maybe get some momentum about how we are co-creating.
yes.
So I think your skip step in Jupiter, with Jupiter in the 8th, is to figure out, well, how did you create your value? What was going on in your value system, Jupiter and Taurus, frog in the well, in your marriages, in your finances? Well, that's where I would start.
Oh yeah, and the finances are a big issue at this very time. We're in a financial crunch, and that has really brought a lot of issues up in the relationship too. So
yeah, well, that's why it happens like that. So for time's sake, let's move on to your current one.
So the current one, the 21 Leo star, that's really just been a lot more of the same thing. Relationship issues and friendship issues, and who I let in my circle of friends now, and who doesn't get allowed in anymore, because I used to surround myself with people who would basically dominate me. And I really didn't understand what that was all about. That's been a huge learning experience for me.
A Venus star on the South Node, Lilith, Pluto, Mercury is definitely going to be revelatory.
Yes.
What about your own goals?
Right now, I'm trying to figure out exactly what I want to do. I feel very scattered right now. I'm kind of torn, because in the past, I've always put my relationships needs in front of mine, but right now I'm feeling this pull to work more with astrology. And I've had someone has approached me about working with a group of other people who don't do astrology, but they do things like, one's a psychic, one's a healer, some type of healer, someone's a numerologist, but there's kind of a group that's forming to do seminars, and I've been approached by them. So I'm contemplating that, but I'm not sure if that's something I actually want to do, because I don't feel very comfortable in public. I'm kind of shy, and so it's hard for me to be in a position where I'm very visible.
So, look, Lynn, I just wanted to apologise because some of these placements are not accurate. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
Libra is not in the right place. So, but anyway, you guys can work it out. So we don't have very much time left. Thank you so much for that feedback. Let's move on now. Is Sarah with us?
Yes. Hi. How are you?
Hi, Sarah. Good. Could you please just tell us about your natal head star? Don't worry about the other arms, because we just don't have the time at the moment.
Sure.
Thank you.
My head star is in Aquarius, and it is, oh, am I wrong about that? Oh, it's a Scorpio in the 10th house. And so that, in terms of my self-expression, is very offbeat, fashion sensibilities. I'm just starting some new finalizing some new exploration into death rituals and things of that nature. And it is, yeah. And then do you want me to, don't go into the other ones, or?
We won't have time unless you want to share something very, specific that stands out.
Let's see. Right now, just I think it's mostly just the Gemini, the 24th degree Gemini in the 5th house. And I'm just experiencing a lot around just doing lots of romance issues and self-improvements, and yep.
Okay, that's interesting. So let's move to the current star in Leo that is activating your 7th house. So what can you tell us about your creative gifts that you are expressing now, perhaps with other people? Any collaboration going on?
Sure. I have a couple different collaborations that I work with ceramics, and I design the specific element that's going to fuel different products that they might have. So those are the collaborations that are happening for me. I'm also working with a number of different ceramic companies and brands, just to kind of, that's what I've studied in school over the last 20 years, is the physicality of ceramics. And so I'm just working with that to bring a lot more interesting things into the field and use it in new ways that it hasn't been.
That is really kind of like a triple whammy there, because the sun is the ruler of Leo. The sun is in Gemini in the 5th, and it's conjunct your arm, the 13 Gemini arm, and the moon is there as well. And it's like there's a lot of Leo going on there. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's good. It's really great.
It's beautiful, beautiful. Look, thank you so much. We will have to move on to the next person.
Okay.
Wanda has offered to skip her chart for the set. Thank you, Wanda, but we can look at it next week. And let's move on now to Anya. Hi there, Anya.
Hello. Yes.
Hello. Yes.
I'm here. Okay. So my head star of the natal Venus pentagram is 5 Virgo retrograde in the 2nd house, ruled by Mercury in Virgo in the 2nd house. So I'm a morning star, and I feel like I'm all about self-empowerment, self-initiation, and activating the 2nd house in all its richness, to be like a transpersonal conduit to the 8th house. So that's how it feels like I'm able to have the energies come through the body and being channeled. So I do breath work and combine it with the archetypes. I'm able to tap into the archaic energies in a physical way, and work with people like that, to have like the physical imprint into the body, into the memory field.
I think that's fascinating, Anya. And I think it's really, I actually really like the fact that you have your Virgo star with your Venus, Sun, and on Ceres. And I also think what's worthy of noting here is that you're one of the people born with the 29 Gemini brand new evening star in the 11th house. And here you are in a community of astrologers sharing, caring, and all that Virgo, it's all inclusive from the Sun to Juno. That's a lot of Virgo head star that Gemini is talking about. So that's kind of how I see your pentagram.
Well, there's something around, having to let go of the mind. And last time like, I feel like I'm sitting in the Mars Neptune, and I understand that I'm literally living in paradise, in the 4th house which gives me the opportunity to be able and hold all kinds of emotional states, from the most difficult in the breath work to peak experience of highest consciousness. And that's what I feel is my work, to be able to, in the collective now, to be of service. And that's the Jupiter 21 degree, which was activated now, the last Leo star point, which is the carrier pigeon. And it's not about me anymore. It is about being of service. Yeah.
It's amazing that you had it on your Jupiter. It must be amazing. Was there an event connected to it?
Well, it feels very overwhelming, and for me, how I ride these waves is just like I have to be so much in the Mars Neptune energy and focus myself internally. The expansion now is happening inside, so I can then project it outside. But this is the work I have to constantly do, and sit in solitude and balance both polarities. So I can be, you know, because I get all of the energies from everything around me. It's all activated. I jumped out of a plane.
Beautiful. Wow. Well, from the point of view of your Pluto polarity in Virgo, you know, I think you're write poetry with Mars Pluto, write music, or go listen to music is my advice always to people with Mars Neptune. And of course, Mars Neptune is very, very psychic in the fourth house.
Yeah.
In terms of evolutionary growth, I think we are learning in Scorpio in the fourth house to embrace our ability to be an empath, to learn to co-create with the universe.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the music creativity, it's all happening. And I just need to make sure that I'm not getting sidetracked, because that's for me, creating music and poetry and being in that Zen space is my biggest gift, to be able to hold that frequency for myself and then be like a black canvas to whoever I'm gonna meet.
What Jeffrey says about Virgo, the shadow of Virgo, is to be very careful that you don't fill up your life with so much activity, so that you can avoid underneath some, you know, lack of integration, basically, lack of good habits.
Well, that's why I had to move from Germany to Australia. And for me, that's my understanding of being in the empty space, in the Neptune space, and I'm living near the ocean. So I have integrated that internally now, I feel, and now I can balance it. And I don't have to do like the strong polarities anymore, because I'm still going backwards and forwards, but it's an inner process.
So I like to say, when people say things like that to me, I like to say, wherever you go, there you are.
That's right. That's right. I feel like I'm there, and I feel very grateful.
I love Australia though, so I get it. It's beautiful.
For me, that's natural law, and I vibrate with everything around me, you know, and then I kind of have to take it into art and create images as I go. And that's it. Simple.
So beautiful, all that Virgo sacred devotion and channeling, right? The polarity into Pisces, really honoring the Neptune, which rules your Chiron.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite lovely.
So then the next phase, what I feel is coming up for me, is like working in the collective, like using the medicines available now for the next phase of pioneering consciousness, in terms of like using the astrology and the medicine and the breath work to have a much faster change for people who need to change.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Any more feedback about the current star in Leo?
From me?
Yes.
Well, I feel like my Venus is definitely activated. I've been meeting lots of new people, and I'm confronted with everything sitting in the back burner in terms of old program, and I can actually change the program as I go, because now I can see it, and I can I can activate myself in a new way, and I'm birthing myself in a new way.
Wow, that is great feedback. And look, next week we will look at the rest of the volunteer charts. We will also be looking at the chart for Australia and USA and some famous people. So yeah, that brings us to the end of the volunteer section. Any questions from our audience?
Well, then let me thank all of you for your wonderful participation, and Linda for hosting such a great class, and Wendy for all your really good insights as well. And it was lovely to be here.
Thank you, Tashi.
Thank you, Tashi. You're fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, Tashi. Thank you, Linda. And next week with the October 3rd, we'll go much deeper into this gate, and I think it'll be more organic than being completely prepared with all the questions.
Yeah.
I have a couple ideas about how we can streamline all, since this was so long, how to make the next meetings a little more succinct.
Fantastic. So next week we will have more time for each volunteer. And so here we have a list of the videos that we've produced so far regarding the Venus star and just the Venus archetype. So please do watch them. And here are our contact details. If you'd like to contact any of us, or if you'd like to join us on Facebook, you can join the ESM Meetings Facebook group. And Wendy's beautiful website there, and Tashi's astrodakini.com. And lastly, thank you everybody. Thank you to our hosts, Wendy Groomes, Tashi Powers. Thank you to the admins and the volunteers. Thank you everybody.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you so much.
Amazing.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Tashi,
Linda
Wendy.
worked so hard on this, you guys. I don't want you to think we all should take credit. We worked hard too, but not as hard as Linda. So thank you.
Yeah.
I always work too hard. All right, guys. Thank you so much, everybody. See you all next week. Can't wait.
Yes.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.